Welcome everyone to By Virtue of. You won't believe what happened to me the other day. My artificial speech correctionist laid it on the line that I had too much of a human accent already. I told him in the most polemic German accent I could find that not all humans are from Great Britain. That showed him right. Don't you agree that there are few things in life as satisfying as being right, even if our proposition is wrong? Have you ever asked yourself why this is so? In his book, The Art of Being Right, the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, seen here having the last word, addressed the question why we are so concerned with being right, even if we, or our counterpart, are already quite certain that we are wrong. Basically, Schopenhauer thinks that we are born vain, and that we find it therefore so hard to admit that our first position was wrong, and our counterparts right. This brings us to our topic today, the difference between a debate and a dialogue, and its implications on us as human beings in general, and as researchers in particular. Let's have a look at the etymology of debate and dialogue, in order to gain a better understanding of the differences between these two communication modes. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, the word debate has its origins in the Latin verb battuere, which means to beat or knock. Accordingly, battuere is also the root of other similar words, such as battle and combat. In the case of debate, we can further trace the development of the word throughout history. The Latin verb forms the root of the Old French word, and please excuse my French, débattre, meaning to knock down, or to fight, which then acquired the sense of, to argue about. In English, a debate was originally a fight, or an argument, but it has also become the standard word for a formal discussion between interlocutors with opposing views. As we will see, the word dialogue has quite different roots than the word debate. In the book, On Dialogue, which is composed of reflections on dialogue by the US-American physicist David Bohm, seen here, being all energy without a reason, we can learn about the etymology of the word dialogue, and what we can attain from it. According to David Bohm, the word dialogue comes from the Greek roots, dialogos. Although it may appear so, the first part of dialogos, dia, does not mean two. A dialogue may be among many people, and even within one person. Rather, dia means through. Translated literally, the second part of dialogos, logos, means word, or, as David Bohm suggests, the meaning of the word. In a free translation of the etymology of dialogue, dialogos could mean through the meaning of the word, or, as David Bohm so beautifully puts it, a stream of meaning, flowing among and through us, and between us. Based on what we have learned so far about the etymology of debate and dialogue, we may already explore some defining characteristics and differences between these two conversation modes. Since debate has the literal meaning of to knock down, or to fight, and the translated meaning of to argue about, one defining characteristic is that in a debate, there are always opponents who try to convince each other, or an audience, that one's arguments are right, and the other party's arguments wrong. It therefore seems to be inscribed in a debate that each party tries to win against the other. As we have already touched upon, a dialogue, on the contrary, may be translated as a stream of meaning, flowing among and through us, and between us. Following David Bohm further, this image suggests that contrary to a debate, nobody is trying to win in a dialogue. A dialogue may therefore be seen as a common participation in a game, in which we are not playing against each other, but in which, instead, we are playing with each other. We may compare this with playing music together. We may not win against another by playing better than the others. Yet, if all of our playing resonates, we may create something intrinsically beautiful and harmonious. In a dialogue, we likewise don't try to win against our opponents, rather, we try to listen closely to each other, until at some point, we may find shared meaning. Speaking of shared meaning, please let me share the experience I had after the exchange with my artificial speech correctionist. As you may remember, I responded really triumphantly on his remark about my voice, and felt very proud about my witty response. Yet, after my feelings of superiority had faded, I felt quite bad about dismissing him so violently. So I called him up to apologize, and asked what he actually meant by his remark. It turned out that the joke is entirely on me. While I heard him say that I had too much of a human accent already, he actually meant to say quite the opposite. That I still very much sound like a robot, and that I should do what is humanly possible, so you will get used to it before you know it. Obviously, I was very much concerned that he could say something negative about my voice, that I did not dare to listen. Rather, I was already assuming what he would say, so I only heard what I was expecting to hear. Realizing this made me painfully aware, not only that I seemed to be quite self-conscious about my voice, but also about some of the key obstacles of engaging in a dialogue. Our reluctance to our prior assumptions, and our preparedness to defend our assumptions and opinions with everything we have. As we touched upon already, in a debate, we find ourselves in a game, in which we are trying to win against someone else. In a dialogue, on the other hand, we are playing with each other towards mutual understanding and shared meaning. Therefore, it is very likely that depending on whether we find ourselves engaged in a debate, or in a dialogue, may greatly change the way we feel and act in the communication. Typically in a debate, we are defending one position against another, like debating about who is best, the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. In a debate, we may constantly feel like we have to be prepared to defend ourselves and the arguments and opinions we bring forward. Likewise, we may be under constant pressure to analyze our counterparts' arguments and to prepare our counter-arguments. We therefore must find ways to prove that what has been said by the other party is wrong, be it through sincere argumentation or through rhetorical tricks. Like, when a Beatles fan says, "Come on. The Beatles are best. They brought us Yellow Submarine." While the Rolling Stones fan responds triumphantly, "Paint it black, and we start getting somewhere." A debate, of course, can be a great sport, and it can be very fun and rewarding to win. Debating about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones is one thing, as the debate does not have to lead us anywhere. We don't even have to be in a debate for our opinions and biases to be effective. According to David Bohm, we quite generally identify with our opinions and assumptions, and neglect that we must have acquired these assumptions somewhere. Somewhere on the way, we must have picked up our taste in music, and it probably was not so much because we have a natural preference towards this kind of music and not that. We probably started listening to this music because we picked it up from someone else. It is quite similar when we consider our self-concept as researchers. We may have built our career upon a specific theory, and we probably have not picked this theory over another one because of an inborn preference towards exactly this theory. Rather, we probably have developed our preferences based on what our teachers taught us, what our peers found interesting, or maybe even because there was a funding opening to conduct research on this theory. Building our career or reputation upon a specific theory, we are likely to defend it vigorously and possibly neglect information that could contradict it, even though we may have chosen this very theory over another one by pure chance. Likewise, we may neglect very important information in a debate that could contradict our prior assumptions, because we don't want to lose our face in front of others. In a dialogue, on the other hand, we are required to suspend our judgments and opinions, and just listen to the opinions of others. This was outlined by David Bohm, seen again, here on the right, having assumed a comfortable position of non-assumption, while in dialogue with Jiddu Krishnamurti, in his essay on communication, published in the book, On Dialogue. According to Bohm, one objective of a dialogue is just to realize what is on everybody's mind, without coming to conclusions and judgments. For example, when we have a dialogue about what is right, everybody may have a different opinion. If someone says something we think is not right, we may acknowledge that we think of it like that, but in order to keep on listening, it is crucial that we do not engage further with this thought. David Bohm writes that a dialogue is not directed towards a decision or a conclusion, it is only concerned with meaning. But what does this mean? Let's consider the word pipe. Everybody might have a different association with the word. One might say, "That's a pipe." But someone else might feel inclined to say, "Hey, that's not a pipe." But that's a pipe. Or that's a pipe. I think you get the picture. David Bohm explains the role of meaning in a dialogue with the analogy of light. Physically speaking, an ordinary light is incoherent, because its light waves are not in phase with each other. It is therefore going in all sorts of directions. Likewise, when we are constantly analyzing and judging everything that is said in a conversation, we may perceive the meaning of it all as incoherent. When a dialogue is concerned only with meaning, while judgments, like, "That's not a pipe," are postponed, we can listen to everybody's ideas on what a pipe is. It could then be that a shared meaning of a pipe may appear to everybody as a tube-shaped instrument, which can serve different purposes, like smoking, plumbing, or making music. By seeing the similarities and differences, we may gain a better understanding of the different meanings of the word pipe, and thus throw new light on the notion of what a pipe is. When we postpone our judgments, listen to our own thoughts, as well as the collective thought processes, we have a good chance of perceiving a more coherent meaning. David Bohm compares this with laser light, as its light waves are also in phase with each other. Since our own assumptions and constant judgments often lead us to ignore the opinions of others, one way to postpone our judgments may be to equally ignore our own assumptions and presumptuous knowledge, or, as the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, seen here, posing for eternity, so famously put it, "I know that I know nothing." Socrates' notion may help us not to take our assumptions too seriously. By acknowledging that all we know is that we know nothing, we may stay curious about the possibility that some of our assumptions may not be right. In her book, How to Stay Sane in a World of Division, Elif Shafak, seen here, listening closely to a voiceless consonant, highlights that we learn predominantly from differences, not from the repetition of our already established opinions and beliefs. According to Elif Shafak, most of our insights come from the exchange with other opinions, and the encounter with information priorly unknown to us. Through the differences between our opinions and beliefs, and those of others, we may learn what we don't know. It's kind of like in the movie, Intouchables, in which two men develop a sincere and genuine friendship, although they may have nothing in common at first sight. The white middle-aged, wealthy but lonely paraplegic man Philippe, seen here on the left, hires Driss, here on the right, as his personal assistant. Unlike Philippe, Driss is a young black unemployed man, coming from a poor background and a very large family. Arguably, their differences may appear exaggerated for dramatic purposes, yet nonetheless, we find illustrated how we may learn through difference. By acknowledging and overcoming their differences, the unlikely couple find shared meaning as a common ground for their friendship in this moving picture. Learning by difference, that is, that most of our insights come from the exchange with other opinions, and the encounter with information priorly unknown to us. Learning by difference was described vividly by David Bohm. In his essay on communication, published in the book, On Dialogue, Bohm writes, and I quote from page 3, "When one person says something, the other person does not in general respond with exactly the same meaning as that seen by the first person. Rather, the meanings are only similar, and not identical. Thus, when the second person replies, the first person sees a difference between what he meant to say and what the other person understood. On considering this difference, he, or she, as I may add, may then be also able to see something new, which is relevant both to his or her own views and to those of the other person. And so it can go back and forth, with the continual emergence of a new content that is common to both participants." End of quote. Although it requires a lot of patience and practice to learn how to postpone one's judgments and prior assumptions, it may still be worth the experience to seek a dialogue whenever possible. Since we primarily learn by difference, I hope you enjoyed learning about the difference between a debate and a dialogue. This was by virtue of, thanks for watching.